For more than 2 decades, I have written in a diary almost every single day. And guess what? I saved them all. Each week, I will be reading from these archives and getting to know myself from the lens of my 10, 16, 25, and 36-year-old self. We'll explore big topics such as body image, queerness, divorce, addiction, mental health, and friendship. I'll read cringy poems and attempt to find compassion for the painful tenderness of my younger self. Join the drama of me and my guests as we explore our boy-crazy, closeted, angsty selves, one stupid page at a time. 2, 1. Such an exciting episode of the Angsty Pod. For those of you who are listening, you might know 2 things. Actually 3. The first is that as I've been going through these journals, I've been laughing a lot at how angsty 16-year-old Yoda is. But there's another version of Yoda who's 33, 34, 35 that is substantially more angsty than I could have ever imagined at 16. That's thing number 1. Thing number 2 is that you might already know is that I love having guests on my podcast. So far, I've had my pal Maria and my other pal Julie. I'll link those episodes at the bottom of this one so you can find them. And the third thing is, you might know that I have a beautiful man in my life. I know I've talked about him on the podcast. I don't know if I've named him. His name's Siva. And I'm going to loop all these things together. Siva is my guest on the Angsty Pod today. Say hello, sweetie.
Well, hello. And this is going to be a lot of fun. Oh, I'm excited. This is going to be really exciting.
So we are sort of snuggled up in Shiva's basement right now. We just had a lovely dinner and have been hanging out this afternoon and just went for a workout this morning, just really doing our thing. And I'm so nervous and so excited for this podcast. It's going to be so illuminating. I think I want to say first that, like, I don't consider myself as someone who is necessarily like good at relationships or an expert in like anything. Well, maybe I'm an expert in like noodles or something, but like I don't consider myself to be like a pro. But what I will say is that I'm always constantly so proud of myself for how I have been able to show up in this relationship. And obviously, like, so proud of you as well for how you've shown up and been, like, so consistent for the last almost 3 years. It's been...
I think it's about growing together. I think we've done that definitely in a lot of meaningful ways. We've definitely come through hard steps together, and did not walk past a person. We always made sure we took the steps together. So I think that's ideal relationship goals for a lot of people, and I think we've done that very organically. Yeah.
It's funny you use those words. Like, I remember in, like, I think it was 2017 or 18, I remember going to the, like, hair salon and getting a haircut. And the girl who was cutting my hair, I didn't know her. Like, we weren't friends or anything. But she said, she asked if I was dating anybody. I was like, no, I'm just, like, went through this horrible breakup. And then I asked her, and she's like, oh, yeah, we're not married, but, like, me and my partner have been together for, I don't know, like 15 years or something like that. And I jokingly was like, oh, what's the secret? And she said, well, you either grow apart or you grow together. But you're both going to grow regardless. So, like, and I remember thinking at that time, like, I'm never going to find that. Like, I'm never going to find someone to grow alongside me because I'm always the one who's like doing all of these like personal growth things, trying to like be my best self, or I'm at this like life phase where I feel like I'm just like standing still and everything's terrible kind of thing. So like coming into our relationship, we actually met at a very troubling time. We were both going through a lot. And I'm actually going to read the diary that like started that. So just to give kind of a little recap, we met in 2021.
September 2021.
September 2021. We met on Bumble. Shout out to Bumble. Thanks, Bumble. Thanks for swiping on me.
Thanks for swiping on me. And sending me the first message, because that was thing back then with Bumble where women have to send the first message.
And I mean, we were both, I think, looking for, I know this like maybe can't be true at the same time, but like I think we were both looking for the same thing, but we were also looking for like different things as well, like the timing and everything. But we met on Bumble, and I had been kind of like dating around a bit. A little bit of context. So in September, when we started talking, do we start talking in August or September? In September. Okay.
September 10th.
Shiva is one of my like favorite and most like confusing aspects of Shiva's brain is that he like remembers every date. Like I could ask him right now, like, when was the first time we did this? And he would for sure know the date. Whereas I'm like not really the best with dates, and it's actually been really quite funny, a funny part of our relationship. But so we met in September, we started chatting. I think we were both kind of like dating, like we were both online dating at the time. And I, for context, had just relapsed with alcohol. This wasn't something that I disclosed to you. At that point, I had been sober. It was my first time ever getting sober was in 2020. And at that point, I'd been sober for a little over a year. Like, I think 16, 17 months. And I thought, like, if you would have asked me back then, I thought I was doing pretty well. But in actuality, I was desperately unhappy. And then, like, with that, my best friend in the world had a really catastrophic car accident, which I also didn't disclose to you till later. So I had just gotten back in August, mid-August. I had gotten back from being on the East Coast for the entire summer. I left like June 13th, and I got back mid-August. During that time, I had been sitting by my best friend's bedside, essentially watching him nearly die, and, you know, he became a tetraplegic, you know, overnight. I was supporting his partner the best that I could, but we were all kind of like drowning, and it was like to this day, for sure, the worst season of life I've ever gone through. And then I got back. I relapsed. Well, actually, I relapsed while I was on the coast. I got back. I was drinking like an absolute animal. And then I started online dating. So obviously, like, I wasn't in the best place to be meeting somebody at that point. But and we'll find this out from this journal. Like, I wasn't actually really looking to meet someone. I was looking for dopamine hit. I was looking for serotonin. I was looking for someone to tell me I was beautiful. I was looking for, you know, a one-night stand. Not proud of it, but like that's where I was at. I'd love to hear a little bit about what was going on for you just before you and I met. Like, you can go back as far as you want in the timeline, but
I mean, you know, for a lot of people that doesn't know, you know, I was divorced just at the cusp of the pandemic. So essentially, pandemic started March 16th, 2020 in Canada. March 1st, my ex-wife moved out. So yeah, my world got basically twisted upside down. And yeah, I just, whatever life that I thought is going to be is no longer going to be. And I think a lot of people understand this. And yeah, when I got back into the dating world, my trust was at the absolute lowest. Like, I didn't want to trust anyone. I didn't let anyone in to my heart space. Like, I showed up as a different person in a lot of situations, which is probably a lot difficult for you to hear, but and probably hard to see. But that's what I was.
It's hard to imagine, like, knowing that you're like, you just wear your heart on your sleeve and you're such like a sweet person, knowing that at the time you were just kind of showing up as a different, I can't even imagine you showing up as like any other version than what I've seen, but
my heart was shot. Like, so it's hard for me to, like, you know, I just don't want to repeat of what happened to me. Like, I put heart and soul into my past, and it's just for me to see crumbling in front of my eyes was just unimaginable. So all of a sudden now, here I am. Dating was completely new, because when I started, you know, when I met my ex, this was probably 2010, 2011. So online dating wasn't a thing. And so for me to get into online dating, I learned a whole lot of funny stuff. Like, I didn't know the definition of DTF until I was in online dating. Like, I had to Google it. Literally, I'm like, somebody had to message me at 2 a.m. in the morning, like, DTF. And I was like, okay, let me Google what that means. And I was like, not really. It's 2 a.m. I'm going to sleep. But thanks for offering. And I'll give you this one funny tidbit. There's somebody who asked me if I was Dom or sub. And I was like, this is a weird question for a midnight, but making a healthy choice, Subway over Domino's. And the person thought I was funny, and I was like, no, this is my real self saying this is what I thought it was. I didn't know what it was. So
you're so sweet and wholesome. Like, this is podcast gold. We had our first date on, what's the date?
September 17th, 2021.
We had our first date, and I obviously wrote about it in my diary. I'm nervous to read this to you, because I'm like, I wonder how much of this is going to surprise you. And then I actually did a really funny thing that I never do. I think it was because I had so many thoughts to download, and I was worried they were going to, like, fly away. So I actually numbered, like, I literally was like, 1, this happened, and then I got to, like, number 25. So basically I have a list of, like, 25 things that happened on our first date.
Nice.
I'm gonna read them now, and like, this is the first time, by the way. Like, Shiva and I have talked about our first date many, many times, but this is the first time that I'm sharing
and recreated our first dates.
Yes, so recreated.
It's a very traditional thing for us to, like, do our date on that specific day every year. So
yeah, we celebrate multiple anniversaries every year. Anniversary of our first date, anniversary of our reconnecting, which you'll hear about soon.
Yes.
Anniversary of, like, first time we traveled together. Anniversary of first time we said I love you. Yeah, we're like that. That's us.
Romantic.
Okay, September 18th, it just says early, because sometimes I say, like, the time. Can't sleep, raging hangover. The only 2 times I've been hungover since I started drinking again have been the 2 times I've been in sexual situations. And then I just start numbering them. 1. Felt confident before leaving the house, decided on a little black dress and new heels. Man, that dress, though.
Oh, it was spot on.
That dress is so cute. I should wear that again. It's like a little off the shoulder.
You were so hot. You were so hot.
2, I had 2.5 glasses of chilled rosé before I left to loosen up. 3, I took an Uber, so no drinking and driving. 4, I honestly don't think I was that nervous. 5, I sat down at Chaucer's, texted him I was here, and he replied, "Is that you?" He messaged me later to say when he walked up, he thought, "Oh my God, this girl is beautiful." So what happened there was, it's funny that, like, in my diary, I'm like, I wasn't that nervous, but of course I was. I was, like, going on a first date, but So I sit down outside because I thought we were meeting outside, and I'd never been to this place before. And I texted you to be like, I'm here, come find me. And you responded, oh my God, or just, is that you? And I thought for a second, you meant like, oh, is that you? Like that you were somehow like disgusted by how again, not in a good place. I'm not feeling my most like confident self. But you were like, oh my God, is that you?
My version was like, I saw you getting out of the Uber. I'm like, is that the girl? Oh my God, she's fucking hot.
Thank you, sweetie.
So being on a first date is nervous endeavor for everybody. And I think my nervousness just took up a notch at that point. But I'm like, I usually show up my nervousness by talking and trying to like persuade conversations. And I think that's what happened. But anyways.
So then we like greeted each other. I said, so 6, he walked up. He was bigger / broader / more manly than I thought he'd be.
Whoa. Whoa.
Later I found myself this is so embarrassing. Later I found myself picturing his shirtless body. He's got nice muscles. Again, for those of you who can't see, because this is a podcast, Shiva is smiling from ear to fucking ear. 7. Dinner was fine. He wanted to sit inside. I felt hot. So this was an example of like, I really couldn't, like you were like, do you want to eat inside? And I should have just been like, I'd actually love to sit on the patio. But like you wanted it to be like just us. So we sat inside because the patio was really busy. The conversation flowed. And this is maybe this is maybe the first date I've ever been on where he talked more than me.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed about you, and this is like so true, I didn't know it about you then, but when you get nervous, you actually talk more.
Yeah, I do.
And I shut down a little bit when I'm nervous. So it was like the perfect recipe. And you were like talking about all kinds of stuff. And I was just sitting there like taking my deep breaths being like, you know.
I remember talking about Sumerian history to you because something that I was reading at that time. And in my head, I'm like, Shiva, you're on a first date. You really want to talk about Sumerian history? But then you also looked intrigued at the same time. And I kept insinuating and asking you that if we can totally change the subject if you really want. You're like, no, I'm fine. This is great.
Well, apparently I was just picturing your shirtless body or your shirtless, body. So that's so funny.
Yeah.
Number 8. I had 2 glasses of wine at dinner and ordered the pasta. Do you remember what you ate?
Chicken paprikash.
Okay. 9. I didn't want the night to end, so I suggested we go over to Milos's and have one more drink. I caught him checking me out.
I specifically remember, so I went to the bathroom. I came back and I saw your Bob Marley tattoo on your...
That's coming. That's coming.
Yeah.
10. We had 2 more drinks at Milos's, so 4 in total, or 6.5 for me. 11. I was at a point at this time where I was very cognizant of how much I drank around other people because I was drinking so much. And I, of course, didn't want you to think I had a drinking problem. And I was like, I mean, at that point, I was doing anything I could to hide my drinking from anyone and everyone. But I was tracking it very meticulously.
Yeah.
11. At Milos's, we talked more, laughed more, but I don't remember much of the convo. 12. I do remember the feeling of really wanting to hug him. And I actually do remember that so viscerally because I had never wanted to hug somebody. And it wasn't even like a sexual thing. I mean, obviously like the sexual sparks were like flying between us, but it was this like, I really wanted to be so close to you. And I mean, to be honest, like that feeling has never really left me since that first date. But I remember being like, so like, should I just hug him? Like I felt so like I almost couldn't not be hugging you.
Yeah.
And it was like a very new thing for me. It's
funny you say that because when we walked from Chaucer's to Milos's, we were kind of like sort of
I know
holding hands, but
I remember.
It felt so right.
It felt right, but it also felt strange because I'm like, we just met and like we're doing this thing where, you know, like how you walk with someone you love, your hands just kind of like fall into each other's.
Yeah.
But at that point, like we didn't even know each other, but like we kind of fell into this.
Our bodies just knew how it should do. It was. I've never had a situation like that.
Yeah,
in the past.
me neither.
Yeah, so from that point, I specifically remember like, oh, this is going really good.
Yeah.
And
me too.
At that point, that's when I was aroused. Like,
yeah. Me too, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, so I said I do remember the feeling of really wanting to hug him. We had a quick hug before we went into the restaurant, and then when he was coming back from the bathroom, he noted my tattoo of Bob Marley and touched my back. Number 13. So I really wanted to hug him, and at one point I just did. And we were quiet for a long time, very dreamy, and I like how big his body feels. 14. I wonder if he saw me checking out his fingers. I was totally looking like, don't even get me started on Shiva's slender, beautiful fingers. 15. So we were flirting, touching knees when he asked me what my deal. Oh, okay. So we were flirting and touching knees when he asked me what my deal breakers were. He told me his, and I think I cringed inside. And then I put 2 points. So apparently you said your deal breakers were smoking and drugs and polyamory. And I was like, at that time, I was smoking like a chimney, doing all kinds of drugs, and was like not sure if I was going to be monogamous. So obviously alarm bells should have gone off then, but I was also like, at that point I was still in my very limited heart space. I was still like, this is going to be a one night stand. Like, I'm going to go home with him tonight. So like, whatever about us deal breakers, you know? Even though like the conversation was going really well, I still just didn't think that was, we were going to end up together at all. It wasn't even on my radar. Number 16, I told him mine and let myself be vulnerable for a second. And I said, I've been on a lot of first dates, but have only ever been on a few second or third. I like people who are interesting, curious, and can let a conversation flow. 17. The conversation was turning into something more sexual. The hugs continued, and he was breathing heavily into my neck. Number 18. I don't know who kissed who, but it was a great kiss. I like that he didn't pull away. I like how soft his lips were, and that he used just a tiny bit of tongue. 19. Definitely a lot of tingles. 20. When we left the bar, he gave me his arm. We walked into the street and had another great kiss and a long hug, and we parted ways. 21. When I got home, I realized I was, in fact, a little drunk. I texted him, home safe, still thinking of your lips, and we proceeded to leave sexy voice memos for the next while.
That was fun.
And then 22, I made nachos.
Yeah, I think
I made nachos, I fell asleep on the couch, and then I moved to bed where I slept for 5 hours. That's how this entry ends.
So one of the important aspects is like how that kiss happened. I specifically remember this because we both were sitting on the same side of the bench, because we were like, let's sit together on the same side.
Yeah.
And it became our thing going forward into this relationship. And then we were hugging, and we were like having our face like kind of tucked into each other's face, and slowly we like moved, but then instead of moving away, we moved towards each other, facing each other, and that's when our like lips met.
So who kissed who?
It was basically both of us. It's a tiebreaker.
I'm gonna just skip ahead a little bit to where I leave a little bit more of a description on our first date, because I found this and I was like beaming. And I've never read this to you, but I think you'll love it. So this was December 7th of that same year.
Okay, so this is after we
had like our second first kiss.
Yeah. After we reconnected.
More on that later, folks. Yeah. Okay, December 7th. Woke up thinking of that first kiss with S. That's what I call you in my diary. By the sounds of things, the first date we had and the first kiss really sealed the deal for him. He told me it was the best kiss he's ever had and how much he loved that I put my hands on his face. Basically, in that moment, he realized that I was a super romantic person, the kind of person he'd been waiting for. And this entry is just like all these little hearts. Like I've just drawn little hearts around everything. I wish I could have been sober for that kiss. I wish I could remember it like he could. I do remember sitting next to him at Milosh's. I was being the best, flirty, sexy version of myself when I asked him to sit next to me instead of across. I was feeling really good. When I went to the bathroom to look at myself and did a check, I felt a little bit drunk, yes, but I also felt happy and giddy. I remember when I was sitting next to him there, I had to fight the urge to hug him. It's all I wanted to do. Again, drunk, confident, flirty me just did. And I guess that's the part that sucks a little now, is that I do not know if I would have done it differently if I had have been sober. And it was sometime around that we kissed. It just sort of happened. We sort of fell into it. And I remember thinking that this was a great kiss. There was no pulling away from the kiss from him. He just moved slow, was gentle, and I could feel him receiving and giving all at once. I don't think I was in my head, but I do remember putting my hands on his face, and his beard felt so soft, and that his arms were around me. I think if we start kissing again, we won't stop.
We never have.
So this is like a few days before we have what is like our second first kiss again when we reconnect. We'll get into that, but I wanted to share that because it's funny how things come back to you. Like even, you know, because by that time in December I was newly sober and all these memories, and I was starting to wonder just what was a result of, you know, drinking and being under the influence, and what was like actually me. It's still something that I struggle with now, but I think I think we'll find out. We'll find out in these next entries. So I'm going to read the entry from our second date. So what day was our second date? Do you remember?
September 22nd.
He's not messing around. He didn't look these up before this episode, guys. No. He just knows. Okay. I really want to hear your like recollection of this. Actually, why don't you tell me the recollection of our second date first, and then I'll read this.
Yeah.
And we'll see how they compare.
Yeah. Okay. So, stellar first date, and then we were now messaging each other a couple times every day, and then we were planning out what we should do on our second date. And I really wanted to be a good guy. And I was like, maybe not bringing her to my place yet because, you know, it's too soon. I know what I would do. So probably somewhere like neutral. So I said, let's go to like rec room or something like that. And I remember. And I
was like, no.
Shut
that shit down.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you're like, no, I want it to be a little bit more private and romantic. And I was like, how about I cook for you and we can have a nice fire in my basement.
Yeah.
Even though it's still kind of summer.
Yeah.
But it started to cool down that year. So I was like, let's have a fire in my basement and I'll cook for you. So, and I was excited for it. And I'll give you this context, I guess. So I was, you know, without a doubt, I was in love. So I'm like, I'm going to do this the best possible way. So I cleaned up. I, set up a beautiful dinner table. I cooked up a meal that was like nicely soaked salmon in spices for an entire day.
It was so good. I still remember that meal.
Yeah.
More than the meal, though, I remember the confidence that you had to cook for a chef was like so sexy. Like you didn't flinch for a second. And that was like very different experience for me. And you knew what you were doing too. It wasn't like I'd had some very bad meals cooked for me on dates, so this was a nice refreshing change.
So
I remember the table, like you had candles lit and you had like 2 bottles of wine picked out, and like you made this like, you know, vegetables and I think rice or potatoes and salmon.
It was like a spiced rice, and I made potatoes,
and it was like really it wasn't just, you know, like
a meal.
Here's your chicken and broccoli. It was like a meal.
Yeah, it was like I put my heart into that meal for sure. I'm like, I have to make the best meal that I could possibly think of to impress you. So. And
what did we do after dinner?
We kissed. We sat in the basement.
Right here. Like right where we're sitting right now. Right on that floor right there. Had a fire and like sitting, you know, in a V together, just holding each other. And I was kissing your neck and we're talking about stuff. And it was a great day in my head, right? But I still was like, where's this going to go? Where are we going from here? Because I still had some questions, if anything, being curious. But I was like, this is not the time to bring that up. So, what was your impression of me that night? Did you find that I was reserved? Did you think that I was like open?
You were definitely a lot more reserved than you were on the first date.
Yeah.
You were very clear. We were very clear about the boundaries. Yeah. Which I was like, I respect it. I don't want to get.
I was like first base only.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were just making out, which was great. But I'm like, I'm not going to push this, even though it's my place. I'm not going to push this. It's fun to just be with the person who really I'm connecting with, you know, after a long time. So I'm not going to push this around at all. Yeah. I want this to work.
Yeah, which I very much appreciated because I did have some firm boundaries, but part of that was because I was actually like dating a bunch of people at that time, and I was just like, I can't be like, I'm not going to sleep with any of them because if I'm going to sleep, like, I don't want to be sleeping around. So I just had firm boundaries, and I was like, I'm not sleeping with any of these people. But like before, like on our first date, like I had a date with like a guy the day before, and then I had a date with a girl the day after. So I was like dating around, whereas you were like, I'm fucking in love. Like, let's make this girl's night.
Yeah, and after our first date, I was like, I don't need to go back to online dating.
I know. That's
the way I work. I think that's the way my brain operates. So I was like, this is great.
And I actually felt that way too, but I wasn't in a place where I could like admit it or act on it. Yeah. So here's what I wrote about our second date.
Here's a funny context. My roommate thought I was going overboard. She was like, "What are you doing?"
This is important context, people.
This girl straight out told me, "You're gonna freak her out." Like, what are you doing? I was like, "I'm just being nice." I'm like, "No, this is not nice. This is
I'm just being my sweet self."
Yeah, and she's like, "No, you're like cleaning the entire place." She's like, she has photos, and she still has those photos.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, when I came downstairs, I'd never been to your house before. I didn't know. I remember feeling. The reason I asked you what was your like impression of me was because I do remember feeling like reserved that night to the point where after we finished dinner, before we came downstairs, you were like, "Can I have a hug?" And we hugged, and it was like a really nice hug. But I think I was just kind of like, I was overwhelmed already. Then we come into the basement and there's like candles lit. There's like little lanterns everywhere. There's music. There's blankets on the floor. Like so fucking romantic. And if I would have been in a good place, a good heart space or a good head space, I would have loved that gesture. But because I was in this like very rocky place where I wasn't able to like receive any kind of love in any form, it did freak me out. But in this entry, I started with sweet Shiva, sweet Shiva. He made dinner, set the table, cleaned. So I did notice all those things that you did. Good. He listened while I talked. He asked questions. He showed me that he really wants to get to know me. He says, "Before we go downstairs, can we hug?" He set up a fireplace, lit candles, and held me close. His arms around me felt so good. Big, strong, safe. When we started making out, he did so very slow, or he did things very slowly. He used his hands and fingers the way I would if I was touching a woman. We made intense eye contact, and he asked me if I was happy. Things were hot. He is a great kisser. Soft lips, slow tongue, big hands all over me. We laughed and joked and talked about our deal breakers some more. Apparently that was a big topic of conversation. When he asked if I wanted to go to his bed, I said no, not tonight. So he just kept kissing me and said he respected that. And then I just wrote at the end of this entry, he says he wants to know me, and I believe him.
Yeah, I was definitely a lot curious then, obviously, because I was really into you.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to really do this, and I want to take this really seriously, and I get a chance, I believe in this thing of everybody gets another chance. And here's my chance, and I'm not going to just throw that away.
Yeah.
So I want to like jump into the pool and start swimming all over again. So.
And I could see that in you. And like I said, if this was I was at a different place, it would have been just a beautiful start to a beautiful relationship. However, I was going through so much, and I'm not sure what day this is from. Let me find the date on here. This is from September like 25th, maybe.
Yeah.
So just a couple days after our second date. Again, I was dating other people at the time. I was still continuing to go on dates. Basically, I was completely had completely abandoned all of my healthy habits. I was not working out. I was not eating. I was not sleeping well. I was compulsively dating. I was compulsively drinking. I was taking drugs. I wasn't walking Nowie. I was just in a really, really bad place. And I wanted to just read this entry just to kind of like describe like what was going on internally. So this is a couple days later. I just say, oh, the stress of losing Omi, of losing Opie, of this pandemic, of Jenny and Aaron, of Carissa, of Jason, of Bob. So I'm just listing all these things that I've lost that are heavy. Like over the course of a year, you know, like my Omi had died, a pandemic had started. And this is just in my own personal world. Like, this doesn't even count, like, the fact that the world's on fucking fire and, you know, black people are being murdered. And, like, this isn't even touching the surface on any of that. This is literally just in my own internal world. Both my grandparents died. Jason had his accident. My friend, really close friend, got cancer. My sister was really struggling. I had gone through a pretty rough breakup. So I just kind of list those and I say, it's been a lot. My body, my heart, they've just been through so much. I feel like I can't breathe so much of the time. All that stuff with me getting home and Bob and me ending was only like 6 weeks ago. My relapse was only 2 months ago. So I'm kind of like taking stock of what's actually like going on in my world. So the fact that I am inexplicably tired makes sense. The fact that I don't feel rested and that I can't super open up, that all checks out. The anxiousness, the wanting to keep my head in the sand for a while, in a place where I can drink and fuck and feel nothing and everything all at once. Jason is refusing treatment. Spoke to A yesterday. She is so tired. It's going to get so much harder before it gets better. My heart absolutely breaks that I'm not there. I wish I could just fly out there tomorrow. It's weighing so heavy on my heart right now. I wish I could just stay in bed tonight and then stay in bed all day. So again, just to like, just to highlight, you know, how and I'm heartbroken. I just can't let myself feel all of it yet. If I do, I'm not sure what will happen. And then I go on to just say like how much I miss Jason. I'm really, I miss him, you know. And if I wanted to cry about this big, deep grief to someone, I know I could, to Genevieve or Rochelle or Laura or Katie or even Shiva. I think he would listen. But I don't really want to. Instead, tomorrow, I'd rather have some wine in the evening and then go on a really stupid date with a stupid man and flirt my way through these feelings. So basically, like, all of a sudden, like, this, you know, beautiful, kind man is, like, in front of me, and I'm just, like, I gotta run in the other direction. I have to run to, like, anything else.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel hearing that?
Well, I mean, given the context, again, I'll go back to our second date. I remember us trying to have some serious conversations, and then we tried to, like, evade the conversation and try to go away and then talk about music, talk about not necessarily shallow stuff, not necessarily deep stuff, but we're trying to swim in that medium lane, because like, as soon as we talk about deal breakers, and, you know, we talked about life in general, and then went into, like, what does make you cry, and but one of the things is, like, what do you think about exclusivity? And I wanted to even start those conversations, but then I knew there's some conflict.
Yeah,
I can feel the conflict, not in between us, but inside you. And so I'm like, it's not me, and I already realized that. I think maturity comes with age to a certain degree, where I was like, okay, there's nothing to do with us here. This is perfectly fine. She's enjoying this as much as she could, but also there's a huge conflict going on. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I don't want to ask. I mean, I try to, like, nudge here and there, but I think you told me about Jason a bit.
Well, I didn't tell you about him till our third date.
Yeah.
So the next entry, again, just to highlight, like, what was really going on. I was feeling very isolated because I felt like I was back here in Ontario just trying to get on with my life, where my heart was on the East Coast in a hospital bed. And, like, I couldn't deal. I couldn't deal with it. And that's why I started drinking again. And I mean, I just was shoving it all. But every once in a while, I would, like, write it down in my diary. And it just got so dark. I'm not going to read this entry because it just gets into, like, it just really highlights the isolation that I felt. And then a couple days later, like, I just say, feeling so scattered. This is a weird premonition. I'm wondering if the exhaustion I felt these last few months can be possibly linked to my gallbladder, which, as you know, a couple years later, I got my gallbladder taken out. I feel so scattered today, unable to stay on one thing or one thought. I don't feel present. I don't feel grounded. I don't feel okay.
Yeah.
I really need to hibernate, get back to some semblance of sobriety. There's a certain anguish in my life right now. Sometimes I think I am really quite prepared for death, the way I've lost people. Like, when I think about the grief I felt over not having Jason's presence in my life anymore, not ever being able to hug him again, I wonder if I can handle death. So, again, my thoughts are getting pretty dark. Really not taking care of myself, not sleeping, not eating. And I'm just trying to put on a brave face for our third date, which happens a couple days later.
Yeah.
So October 3rd.
Yeah.
You take me on a hike.
Yes.
I do something strange on that date, and instead of having you pick me up at my house, I tell you I'll meet you at the market.
Yes.
And I do that because I'm somebody else that I'm kind of involved with at this point starts showing up at my house uninvited, and it's really freaking me out. And I don't want another man to know where I live. And that has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
But I just was like, meet me at the market. We'll go from there. Which is, like, not a super green flag. All right. So you tell me, what was your impression of our third date?
Before getting into the third date, I think the important context is what happens between our second and third date and leading up to that third date, because between our first and second date, we were talking just about enough. Like, I'm not a frequent texter. I like text once a day and just like, keep the thing rolling and keep knowing more, and then getting to that fire of the second date, which was great. I think between second and third date, it went a full dip. I think knowing you were also busy. I think it was a peak end of the catering season at that time, so you were also working, which I completely understood. But there was also like a lot of messages which was like one-worded.
My communication style was changing.
Yeah, your communication style changed drastically.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. Usually, again, we were still online dating at that time. In online dating terms, that's basically when, it usually means that you're losing interest.
Yeah.
You found somebody else. It's usually the...
Did you feel like I was losing interest?
No, I was like, that can't be it.
Yeah.
It's like, I was in a conflict at that point, right? Like, I'm like, this can't be right, because everything went well.
Yeah.
So, like, I've been on bad dates. And bad dates usually, like, okay, this is not going to go anywhere. Either of us, like, people in the both places would be like, yeah, this is not great. Or I would say this is not great. The other person would say, okay, I didn't feel anything. Which would be just fine, but this is like in that limbo.
Yeah, because our first date was amazing.
Yeah, so between second and third date, we were like talking and not talking, and it was like very, and it was awkward in a couple instances.
Does it make a lot of sense to you now that I've read some of that? Yeah. Like I didn't let you in on how much I was struggling, but you knew that I was conflicted about something.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can see there's something deep and dark.
Yeah.
Right. But I just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Because it's deep and dark.
Yeah. And on our third date, I told you.
Yeah.
I told you part of it.
Yeah. Like, I've known about the East Coast. I know somebody that lives there in the East Coast, because we've talked about a lot of that in our before our first date, on our first date, but not into the details of what's happening.
Yeah.
So that gave me a bit of puzzle pieces around what happened between the second and third date.
Yeah.
And on the third date, you were sad. You felt very distant.
I know. I remember us driving to the hike.
Yeah.
I think about 40 minutes, 50 minutes. And I wouldn't even look at you. I was just looking out the window.
Yeah.
You kept trying to make conversation. And I was just like, in my head, I was just like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Like, why would I draw this person closer into me when I'm running in the other direction? It's so not fair.
Yeah.
But I also, you know what? I needed to be sure.
Yeah.
I needed to be sure that I was prepared to like end things with you, because I knew that it was going to be big if we started dating. Yeah. And I obviously was not prepared for that, but I needed to be sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw the conflict in you on our hike, even, because you really wanted to hold my hand, but then you'll like...
No, you wanted to hold my hand.
No, yeah.
You kept reaching for my hand, and I was like, I don't want to hold hands.
That's what I was trying to get to, is that I was being straightforward about it. Like, I'm still that guy who's like, I'm going to be freaking romantic here.
Yeah.
But in your heart of hearts, you want it to be romantic. I can see that in you, because sometimes you wear your heart in your sleeve, and your eyes says something, but your body's like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Because you're like that, like, I'm trying to like not give this anymore, or like you had this like very rigid posture.
I can remember exactly what my body felt like then.
Yeah. So, but then you loosened up a little bit when we were having chai.
Yep.
But like you were like having your head on my shoulder, and I particularly remember the spot where like we're sitting, we're having chai, and you like just put your head on my shoulder, and I can feel all the sadness inside you. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's sad. There's something really bad. And in my heart of hearts, I'm like, I wish I could help. I wish, if she could share, I'll be able to help. But we're also on our third date, so I just can't push.
Yeah. Probably what I needed then was a friend.
Yeah.
I didn't need another, romantic pursuit. I needed a friend.
Yeah.
Little did I know that you were going to show up and be the best friend ever. But at the time, I think I realized that on that date.
Yeah.
Because I let myself lean on you.
Yeah.
And I also was overcome with, I cannot pursue this. Like, it's just going to lead to so much heartache.
Yeah.
And this man is already heartbroken, you know?
Yeah.
And
but
I didn't want to do that to another person.
Yeah, I think by the time you let me drop you in your house.
I remember, yeah.
And then we had like a little peck of a kiss.
I remember.
And I knew then this is ending soon.
This is ending soon, yeah. So did I, but I still waited a bit.
Yeah, I was at that point. I was just like, this is just like a this is thank you.
Yeah.
We've had a great time, but I don't think this is gonna go any further than this.
So what day did I text you to end things?
October 8th.
Okay, so this is October 3rd.
Yeah.
I ended up drinking most of a bottle of wine on Friday night. The catering went fine. I came home, watched TV until I fell asleep. Saturday was up pretty early, was feeling low. I got ready. I was feeling so much less confident than usual. Also less comfortable. Shiva was happy, I underlined, happy to see me. Gave me a long hug. I felt so awkward walking around the market with him. He was asking all the right questions, but I wasn't present at all. We went for a hike. Several times he tried to touch me and hold my hand. I really did not want to hold his hand. It's not him. It's me. There's just too much going on. We stopped for a picnic. He made chai and brought some cute cookies. I remember that picnic. It was so fucking cute. Mm-hmm. We talked. It felt better, but still kind of awkward. We were staring into the distance, and he asked me who I would see in a crystal ball if I could. I knew. Jason. My heart raced before I told him, but I decided to be vulnerable and tell him the truth. Told him all about Jason. He teared up. He said he was so sorry, and he told me he'd be there for me. I barely felt it. I hugged him and thanked him. Can I tell you something? I really like you. That's what you said. Mm-hmm. I don't know what is wrong with me. That's how I end that entry.
Yeah. I did say that. It was...
I remember.
But, like, it was in a somber mood, too. Like, I really like you, but I feel like...
Yeah.
I can see this is not, going anywhere right now.
Yeah.
That's right now.
Yeah.
But there's a lot for it to come forward.
Yeah. So, a few days later, I sent you a text.
You sent me a voice message.
A voice message on WhatsApp and said... I have too much going on. I tried to be as honest as I could, and it was the truth when I said, like, it's not you, it's me, literally. You're great. And I remember being so nervous for your response, and you responded really soon after and said, it's totally okay. I can tell that you're going through a lot, and I would just love to be... I'd love to be there for you, like, as a friend.
Yeah, and we both agreed, to be friends and, like, let's, be in our lives, essentially.
But, everyone says that when they break up, right? Yeah. So I actually didn't have very much faith at all that we were actually going to be friends. And for the next... So that was October 8th.
Yeah.
What was going on for you in, like, what happened after that for you in October, November?
So October 8th, so we ended up, we kind of distanced ourselves from dating scene, I guess, but we still occasionally would send in check-ins.
It was pretty seldom, like, it was pretty on and off, but like, you would send me, I remember you sent me, like, a picture of, like, a sunset and just said, I hope you're doing okay.
Yeah, like, I would, like, send, like, a full moon shot that I would do with my telescope. And
I was like, is this guy really that great of a guy that when he said, like, let's stay friends, he meant it. Because that was just, like, so new for me, right?
Yeah.
It's not that I was opposed to being friends at all. I just didn't think it was realistic that it was going to happen.
Yeah. But internally, I was definitely like, oh, there was something really good here. And then I was definitely heartbroken.
Yeah.
But I was like, but I remember going out with my best friend at that day, and I said, I feel like, you know, this is not the end.
Yeah.
And I feel like she's going to come back at some point, and I think there's something here. A lot of people rejected my idea.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought, I'm being a stupid fool. I went on dates around in that time. I was just like, whatever. I'll specifically say this. Like, my roommate caught me bringing somebody over. This person was like nicely dressed up in the morning, brought me coffee, and I was like literally wearing like my gym shorts and tank tops. Brought her inside my house, and nothing cleaned. We slept together, and she's like, do you see the difference, like what you're doing to yourself? And I was like, yeah, I just, I don't want to put the heart and soul again. This is just not worth it, because so but anyways, it's but at the same time I was like, there's something in there, I'm gonna pursue this if there's an opportunity, but I'm still gonna stay friends, because if that's the boundary we're gonna set, that's fine too, because this is a really cool person that I've actually met.
You weren't like, you were open to more, but you were also open to the idea that maybe we were just going to be friends. Yeah,
because there's a lot to learn from you. I immediately picked up the vibe that you have this calm sense of answering certain scenarios. Like, there's a way you respond, communicate. There's a kindness in there. So there's a lot of differences I found between the way I did things and the way you did things, and I'm like, there's an opportunity to learn. There's a friend I can make because I can learn from them.
Yeah.
So
would you say that I broke your heart?
It was more so, understandably, it's not like you just shot a dagger into my heart. You did that in the most kindest fashion. And you're like, I love this idea, but I can't be doing this idea right now.
Yeah.
So you did that in the most kindest possible way, and I'm like, this is the most gentlest and purest form of like breakup, if there's one ever one. And I was like, you know what? I respect this person even more now.
And the thing is like, even though we both had strong feelings, we'd only been out 3 times, right? Like, it felt like we'd known each other a very long time because of the connection that we had. But like, in reality, like, we'd only spent 3 times together. We hadn't slept together. Like, and it was really new. And I love that you had this like faith in us that no one else had. Your friends didn't have, like your roommate didn't have. Everyone thought you were kind of nuts. Yeah. And, I didn't have it either. I didn't have faith that we were going to reconnect romantically, because as much as I did send the breakup message, with as much kindness as I could muster at the time, I felt a lot of shame because I knew I was making the wrong choice. But I saw no other way. Yeah. An unfortunate part of this story that I'm not going to center our beautiful episode on, but I'll maybe read about later. An unfortunate part of this story is there was a fork in the road, and you were one side, and I chose the other side. And unfortunately, what was at the end of that other fork in the road was something really damaging for me. So that's how I spent October and November. I spent it with a man who did not respect my boundaries, did not listen to me, did not treat me with kindness. That's what I believed I deserved at the time. He was also somebody who encouraged my heavy drinking. He was somebody who caused me harm and violated me. And I'm still sort of like processing and dealing with some of the repercussions of that, as you know. And it's like, when I think about what I could have spared myself, it's hard to look back on that.
Yeah.
Because I think about, you know, how beautiful these last 3 years have been. And even though it was short, I was only with this guy for, you know, 4 or 5 weeks. A lot of damage was caused in that time. I couldn't even read back on those diary entries because it's just so painful to see what I chose. What happened in mid-November was a gift, was bestowed upon me. I went back to the East Coast. Jason had been transferred from the ICU to a different hospital. He was having some physical therapy, and he was in like a rehabilitation center in Fredericton. And so I went back to the coast, and
I got the photo. I remember you standing beside Jason and sending me a photo.
Yeah,
I made it here safe.
I remember too, because like I said, we were kind of trying to be friends at that point, just from a distance.
Yep.
We were pretty distanced.
Just a well-wisher.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're safe.
We were updating each other.
Yeah, pretty much check-ins. Yeah.
Yeah. And a couple things happened on that trip. The first thing that happened was I had what I would call a couple of eye-opening experiences. The first was that I got so drunk at the airport. There was a flight delay. There was a 4-hour flight delay. But I was already at the airport, so what did I do? I went to the airport bar. And I got so drunk at the airport that I almost got kicked off the plane. And when I got to the airport, because of the flight delay, my roommate Steve, was already in bed. And he said, just take a cab, like, you know, I'll pay you back or whatever. So I took a cab from the airport to his place, and the cab driver started rubbing my thigh, turned down a, you know, secluded street. I thought I was done. Like, I literally thought I was done for. He ended up, I told him to like stop touching me, and then we pulled into like onto the street, and I just got out. I literally just got out of the cab, threw money in his face, and ran to where I was staying. And like, I didn't tell the man that I was staying with, a friend of mine, I didn't tell him till the end of that week. And he was like on the phone immediately trying to get like this cab driver, like, you know, trying to get his license number, all that stuff. But like, I realized in that moment, like, it's only a matter of time before something really bad happens to me. Because I keep putting myself in these dangerous positions. So that was the first kind of eye-opening experience. The second eye-opening experience that has a little bit of a happier ending is I told Jason about what I'd been through in the last couple months. Because when I visited him initially after his accident in the summer, he wasn't conscious. Like, he was He was unconscious for almost the entire time I was there by his bedside. So we finally had a chance to, like, you know, catch up. And he knew that I was kind of seeing someone, you, and I told him that, like, I ended it. And he's like, why? And I just broke down. I just broke down, and he was really excited about you because he's been to Chennai, where you're from, in India. And also Jason, I think, knew that, like, I always, like, in my heart, I think, like, there was some deep part of me that thought I'm going to end up with an Indian man. I just, like, had this vision when I was young.
The little boy with the yellow shirt?
That's right. A little boy with the yellow shirt. That's exactly right. See, you do listen to me.
I do.
And,
Always do.
and also, like, I mean, him, like, and Katie, like, they were all, like, rooting for you, even though, like, I wasn't even necessarily rooting for you. They were all rooting for you. People kept asking me, what about, like, that Indian guy, you know? And I was like, oh, you know, we ended things already, kind of thing. So I told Jason what had been going on for me, and I was absolutely beside myself. I was bawling my eyes out. And, you know, Jason very calmly was just like, you need to go home and take care of yourself. And, like, he said, I'm so glad you came. I know that you care about me, but you can go and take care of yourself. And he said, like, basically he was like, you need to quit drinking. Like, he didn't say that, but, like, he was like, you need to go fix this. Mm-hmm. And he said, I said, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can get sober again. I don't even know if I want to. And he said, I know you can, because you did it before. And he said, I want you to call me every time you're thinking about having a drink. Just call me instead. And so I had one last glass of wine with my friend that I was staying with. And then I got on a plane home. And the next day I woke up sober. And the next day I called you.
You sent me a message, I remember, with a photo of Naui saying, home sweet home, heart, heart.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm so glad you're back home. How was your trip? Tell me all about it. We should catch up.
The first thing I wanted to do when I got home was see you. Well, that's the halfway point of this episode. I'm going to be splitting this episode into two halves because we were just having so much fun. We didn't want the recording to ever end. You can catch part 2 of this incredible episode with my love, Siva, next week. I'll be posting it next week. Thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you all so, so much. And thank you, of course, to my love, Siva, for giving me hours of your time for this podcast, for all your love, unshakable support, and for being the sweetest and strongest and most beautiful man I've ever had the chance to know. All right, everybody. Big, big love. Thanks for listening.